What's going on, people? How y'all doing? Hope everybody's well. Welcome back to the Onyx Report, Black Masculinist news for the day. At the end of the week, man, it's a lot going on. And I got to get up early, do an 8 a.m. lecture. So I won't be long, especially since my son and I are doing some spring cleaning. But just thought I'd get up here real quick and just give a non-spoiler review of a couple things. Um, and if you're interested in getting deeper into it, you definitely got to follow my boy Artisan MC. He gave a review of the Batman the other night, and unless he has changed his schedule, usually on Sundays, I think at 11 a.m., he decides to go into more depth. So you can check his channel, Artisan MC. But yeah, let me see. What's up, Hybrid? How you doing? Ragnar, what's going on? Adrian, what's up? Did I catch the racial undertones? Yeah, it was interesting. Winston, what's up? What's up? Yeah. Yeah. So, this is gonna be real light. I'm really not good at non-spoiler reviews, but I figure this is something that I need to get better at anyway, because I would have been hot if somebody would have dropped too much information, especially on Batman. Some things you want to see for yourself. But usually I'll do a review like a week or two later. And as far as I'm concerned, if you're a true fan, you ain't seen it within a week. Yeah, I don't really care. But no, I'm gonna do it justice. I'm not gonna divulge anything. Let you guys check it yourself. So like I said, it'll be brief, just a quick pop through. Like, share, subscribe, join, and donate. Support the channel. You can donate right through the traditional stuff, Patreon, Cash App, it is, PayPal, Venmo, it is what it is. Support the channel if you would, so that we can keep the lights on, as it were. But yeah, so I'm gonna start with Picard, just to let people fall in. And I don't really think too many people are tripping off of Star Trek, and I think a lot of that has to do with last season. Was not really what even many hardcore Trekkies wanted to see. And there's more of that going on. So, I caught the episode today, the very first episode of season 2, because as the hype goes, it's the return of Q and the return of Guinan, right, played by Whoopi Goldberg. So that was a big deal, and it was enough for me to attract my attention. I decided to keep my little $4.99 a month Paramount account just for that. I ain't paying more than that for all these damn apps. What's up, Arson? Yeah, man, just shouted you out. So, I told him you're going at 11 on Sundays, but if I'm wrong about that, tell me now so I can give you, proper props and let people know where to go. Because I'm not going into detail. I'm just, this is some surface level, kind of stuff because I don't want to spoil it for people. What's up, BGS? Good to see you in here. Afro Shop, what's up? So anyway, just real quick and dirty, right? Looking at Picard. I tend to look for the racial and gendered kind of overtones to things, as it were. And growing up a Trekkie, these are the kind of things that that naturally appeal to me. The problem I've had with Picard is, one, the character is nothing like he was, in the New Generation series, and that in and of itself doesn't have to be a bad thing. He's much older. It's not a bad thing that he's different as an older person, but the way they went with it, he's far more he's weak-willed. He's not as direct as I liked him to. Picard used to be very, kind of clear-cut, very direct, very forward. He wasn't quite William Shatner Kirk forward, but he was forward enough. You know what I mean? Now he's real kind of milk toast. People around him tend to set the agenda. And the other part of the program, the other part of the problem with Picard is it's very gynocentric. The show is very gynofocal in that sense. So I'll show you what I mean, and you can see it just in this, right? So here's the breakdown of the show. You can see the creators: Kirsten Beyer, Michael Chabon. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right. Akiva Goldsman, right? But when you get down to the various actors and actresses involved, it is a very female heavy cast. Um, and that being said, the way the show is kind of written, he's just kind of a windsock. Like he's just kind of standing there, and everybody around him kind of sets the direction for things. And most of the time, it's women. So in this show, very first episode, there's literally a couple of dudes, one of whom was a hologram. So it is what it is. So you have Picard in there. You have Elnor, who was the first Romulan to join Starfleet. So you have him. Just a couple dudes, really. It's a lot of women. And a lot of these women, especially when you look at Dr. Agnes Jurati, for example, character, just really the kind of way they're written, they're hard to get along with, combative, in terms of physical confrontation as well as argument. They're really pushing this feminist narrative, right? This strong, independent narrative to the point where even talking to men outside of anything science or space related is a chore. The most well, I would have said the most functional relationships tended to be lesbian ones, but they've even ran that into the ground as far as this season. I mean, even the lesbian relationships are reminiscent of heterosexual relationships in the series, where women are always argumentative, combative, fighting, and men are milquetoast and windsocked and weak, and it's so repetitive in a particular way. Women are quick to fight, they're whip smart, they're geniuses and doctors, and men are still kind of fumbling around on each other, or they're immature children. And even in this particular episode, he goes to see Guinan. Now that's in the commercial, so I'm not giving anything away with that. But he goes to see Guinan, and he always goes to see her for direction, which is a very kind of mammy-esque, character, and she always kind of has been. And one of the telltale marks of the mammy, or the Uncle Tom for that matter, is that they have an undue amount of dedication to a white character. And there's not always a clear-cut reason why, right? Now, that's one thing. If I'm in a street fight with 6 people and they pull out weapons and I'm about to die and you jump in and save my life, I got a reason to dig you. I got a reason to dedicate myself to you in some way, shape, or form. That stuff doesn't tend to happen in these relationships. You just have a black character that pays an undue amount of respect to a white character because they exist. And you kind of see that, in my opinion, with Guinan, and to some extent even Batman, but we'll get to that, right? So, they kind of hint at some emotional issues that Picard has to grapple with, and he goes to Guinan for that kind of guidance. And it's just it's something that I'm really bored with, but they keep doing it. Hollywood, that is. Now they do deal with the issue of Whoopi Goldberg and the character who plays Q, and why they look older now, and it's fairly creative. I got to give them that, because if you're gonna have immortal characters, I really don't think they expected to still be having these characters 40 years later. So they had to kind of explain it, and I thought they would have just brushed it off, but they actually dealt with it. I ain't mad at that. What's up, Black Uru? What's going on? Octogenarian Picard. Yeah, real talk. Yeah. So I mean, it in that respect, it kind of bothered me. But I think the biggest issue I have with the show, as you guys know, now, all right. So it's not only that the men are often portrayed as weak and not very bright, but on top of that, and there are very few of them in that respect. But you have this issue with racial ambiguity, and I think it plays out in both series as well, Picard and Batman. But you have the Michelle Hurd character who plays Rafi. A little bit of racial ambiguity there. She's not only racially ambiguous, she's also lesbian. She's in love with Jerry Ryan's character, Seven of Nine. And so that's not working out very well because Seven is so alpha. They're actually both alpha, and that's the other thing. All women have to be alphas. They have to be scientific geniuses, alphas, and they have to be really combative and always in a fight left and right. And if they're not the fighter types like Dr. Agnes Jurati, they're at least snide and argumentative, right? So it's one way or another. I mean, there was a point where a guy tried to hit on Jurati, and it was just anyway. Just the whole notion of some type of relationship was just immediately a problem, of sorts, because at the end of the day, you know, men can't be viable relationship options anymore. They have to be a problem. It has to be difficulty, So, I mean, I'm curious about characters like Q. I've always liked Q. And they know that they're delving into nostalgia fairly well, and they did it last season, which is easy to do after 40 years. It's probably not exactly 40; it's less than that, but you know what I mean. They're delving into it, and I don't blame them. They're making their money, but at the end of the day, it's the racial politics and the gender politics, don't generally do well, in my opinion, for a lot of these shows. And what you end up with is, a lot of action scenes with men waiting on women to kind of save them, direct them, so on and so forth. Last season you had the Borg, Romulans, very female led kind of villains and so on and so forth, which is in of itself interesting, because at least we've broken from the framework where all women were inherently good and all men were inherently bad. Now we're just in a more nuanced framework where women can now be villains, but at the end of the day, they're still smart, they're still strong, they're still brilliant. Men, on the other hand, tends to go back and forth. Who says William Shatner is 90 and still kicking? No, that's a Starship Captain. Yeah, hey, if they bring Kirk back in this, I wouldn't be surprised. Matter of fact, I'm almost kind of surprised if they don't, because that's going to attract a lot of attention. And these kind of shows rely on being as provocative as possible. So I wouldn't be shocked if they found a way to do it. Really wouldn't. Anyway, but yeah, I will say that it's interesting to see how both Q and Guinan handled the age issue, considering that they're not technically supposed to. So that was kind of a little creative plus, but short of that, and they have to have a good stunt man for Patrick, man, because he's barely walking through scenes and they're throwing him around left and right. Ships are exploding. He can't keep up with all of that. But he's doing his part, so it is what it is. BGS is a superpower now. Yeah, man, it seems that way. It definitely seems that way. Yeah, and so Freddie says, and now Jean-Luc Picard is not really Jean-Luc Picard. Nah, he's not to me. He's not. I get it. He's older. He's been through some things. He's kind of broken. Again, this is no spoilers, so I'm not even going to give spoilers away for the first season. But if you saw the first season, you really they give you the story as to what kind of broke him. His values, his beliefs, and you get it. But part of what I always liked about Picard is no matter how bad things got, no matter how many mistakes he made, he still kind of pressed on. So that you don't really get. So that said, like I said, this is going to be brief. It's just some surface thoughts. I'm interested in your reflections, your thoughts. I'm not at all. I mean, I'm not even, delving into any kind of data in relation to, what these representations could mean symbolically. Of just some surface level thoughts, and I'm interested in hearing some of yours. Yeah, T-Rex says Rafi's son is alienated from her and resents her. Yeah, I haven't rewatched the first season and prep for the second. I didn't really like the series enough to do that. Normally I would. So I'm forgetting some of like the secondary and tertiary stories behind it all. I vaguely remember Rafi's son. I do remember that now. Yeah, I do remember that. But they still play with a lot of racial ambiguity there. But you can't have really like straight up black characters anymore. That's a whole nother thing. Everything's got to be all over the place. Because the race, gender, and sexuality are all social constructs, especially in the Star Trek world. So everything just has to be, kind of pieced together and fit with the flow, and everybody does what they. So there's no hard answers or anything, except when it comes to men being fairly irrelevant. But anyway, so let me jump ahead. So let me not jump ahead, but let me jump to the Batman. Now, y'all know I am a serious science nerd. I mean, sci-fi nerd. It is what it is. I don't have these swords on the wall for nothing. I tend to enjoy a lot of shit that a lot of people don't, even in the sci-fi world, just because I'm a sci-fi nut. I think the only Batman series I really didn't like at all were probably the ones from the 90s, post Michael Keaton, you know, the George Clooney series, that was probably the Joel. Really should say the Joel Schumacher era Batman were the ones I hated the most. Short of that, I usually found something I liked about Batman. And I know people like to watch these things because it's so much more interesting to hear people tell you what they hate. I don't hate a lot, you know, because I was one of those kids that was, I've been reading comics for over 40 years, and most of these things, I mean, when I saw them on TV or in movies, they were so far away from the comics in terms of, how the comics helped you imagine what was happening. I never really expected to see stuff on screen that was taken seriously. I mean, I saw it with Christopher Reeve's Superman. I saw glimpses of it here and there, but this whole era of superhero movies, I'm a fanboy. I'm loving the fact that they're happening. I don't know how long they're gonna happen for, so I'm kind of trying to enjoy it while they're here. Um, so that said, I didn't mind another Batman movie. They didn't go over, his origins. I think that's been pretty well set. Um, I will say this: it also wasn't gynofocal, meaning that women could catch it too. They could kick ass, but they could also get their asses kicked, which I was surprised about because that's not always a given. The age of the Mary Sue might actually be coming to an end where you actually have to write, characters that have problems, that have backstories, that can get their asses kicked. I mean, we might be at that point. You got to see Zoe Kravitz's Catwoman, fighting Batman. And interestingly enough, he ain't pulling no punches, really. I mean, kind of did. It ain't like he did, he couldn't have done more, but it was almost like he wasn't necessarily trying to hurt her, but he wasn't trying to take no shit either. And I was blown away by that because usually, like I was just watching Daredevil the other night with Ben Affleck, and he's in there, meeting Electra Nachios for the first time, and she kicked his ass. You know what I mean? And I used to see that a lot. They in order to highlight how powerful women were, in a superhero movie or an action movie, they'd always let the woman dominate the star of the movie. And I was like, my attitude was like, well, why are we watching a movie about him then? If this side chick character who's barely in the movie for a few minutes can come in and kick his ass, why do I want to see 2 hours of him on the screen? Why don't we just watch her? But then we got that with Rey and Star Wars, and I never asked that question again after that. But the point is, they're starting to write these characters with a little more nuance, a little more complexity, and I'm all for it. I'm not against strong female characters. I just don't like female characters that really don't have any challenges, And in this movie, anybody could get it. Anybody could get it. Damn, who said she's part of the quintessential member of the Lucky Sperm Egg Club? Damn. Oh my God. Uru, you cold, man. Yeah, I will say Zoe is exceptionally pretty. There's no question about that. There's no question about that. And in the tradition of the 1966 era Catwoman, they always make sure that she's beautiful of some sort. They've gone back to the Black Catwoman after the failure of Halle Berry, but Zoe is fine. There's no question about it. And she does have a zaddy complex in this. I will say that. You kind of find out why, halfway through the film, but it is there nonetheless, So, in one level or another, she's chasing white men's affirmation throughout a lot of the film. And, it is what it is. It's not a far cry from Guinan, but it just lacks, Guinan's lacked a sexual kind of motivation. But Zoe's character, you still get that need for white male approval that plays out, But the story wasn't bad. Story wasn't bad. One of the things I look for in a superhero movie, especially if it's a new genre or not genre, a new series, excuse me. I look to see, what the entrance looks like. And Batman's entrance in this movie wasn't bad. Wasn't bad. We're in a different era. You can't really do the 1977 Christopher Reeve where he doesn't show up for an hour and a half into the film or something. You can't do that anymore in 2022. But even though I would still place Christopher Reeve and Wesley Snipes' entrances into their movies. Like the first scene I saw with Christopher Reeve with the cape on, even as a kid, I almost shed a tear. It was just so well done. And then by the time I was into my adulthood and I saw Wesley Snipes enter for the first time as Blade, I was cussing in the middle of the movie. I was yelling out loud in the theater and cussing because his entrance was so goddamn good. I mean, just strong, but really well done. I haven't seen a lot of entrances into a movie that were parallel to those two. This wasn't, but it wasn't a whole lot off. It wasn't bad. It wasn't bad. It just wasn't that as iconic. Exactly, Artisan. Blade killed it. If you haven't seen it, you can probably catch it on YouTube. Just the first few minutes of Blade, when you first are introduced to him as a character, it is so badass that you can't do nothing but love Blade after that. I mean, especially as a black man, all that intensity, all the rage, all the frustration, he carries it well, and then has the nerve to smile at a particular point. Oh man, I still love it. I get goosebumps now when I watch that first entrance of Blade. So that said, this wasn't quite as strong, but it wasn't weak. It wasn't weak. Batman is known for stealth, and this is one of the first times. Actually, he does it a couple times in the movie where you see him actually use intimidation in terms of sound. Right. All I'll say on the second one is you've seen images of the new Batmobile. There are some elements to that I liked. The entrance of the Batmobile was the shit. I'll tell you that much. But even him by himself using sound as a form of intimidation before he's even visible on the screen, I give him credit. I will give them credit for that. I said this when Artisan did his kind of spoiler-free review. And again, I urge you to go watch it. Go to Artisan MC, check him out. Because he did it right out the theater. I didn't. I wasn't even planning on doing this. It just kind of hit me earlier today. Maybe I should do a non-spoiler review. So usually if I'd have planned on it, I'd have, taken some notes and done some other things. I didn't do that. So I'm just really live, fresh off the head. Artisan's more in depth, so go check him out. But I will say though, let me see, it was the entrance was cool. One of the things I said to Artisan though was that you got Jeffrey Wright. Jeffrey Wright is, an incredible actor. There he goes right here. Jeffrey Wright is an incredible actor. I have to give it to him. An incredible. I've liked Wright in so many things. I don't care if you like him or not. Incredible actor to me. I'll say this. His character was underutilized. Now, if they got a trilogy in mind, then, and I hope, they do. If you're going to have a Jeffrey Wright, you better have more than one movie if this is how you use him. It's not that he wasn't in the movie, but you really didn't get to see Wright spread his wings. And when you've seen the range that Wright has, I mean, damn, from Ali to Lackawanna Blues to, there's so many freaking movies, man. Jeffrey Wright has got crazy range. His Jim Gordon isn't bad, but he didn't really get a chance to spread his wings. And so for me, there was a little bit of that I wanted to see. I wanted to see more of his range. I also wanted a bit more of an explanation because in a way, and I'm not calling Wright a Tom, but there was some Tom-esque stuff happening in my opinion, only in the sense that he had such an undue level of trust that they didn't explain. And I get it. Jim Gordon, Batman, they're always a team. Although there were moments where they didn't get along, there have been moments where you wasn't quite sure if Jim was going to shoot Batman in the knees. Like not in this movie, but I'm saying in other storylines, they were not always a lock. If you ever see the animated Batman Year One, that was an excellent kind of, you got to see over time how their relationship developed. And it helped you understand why Gordon had trust for Batman. He didn't just give it. It had to be seriously earned. Now, obviously, they didn't want to do a new, telling of the origins of everything. What's up, AL? Freddie, what's going on? But, at the end of the day, I still wanted a little more because you got to understand this Gordon goes up against his entire precinct for Batman in ways that, I'm like, yo, nah, y'all got to give me something. in the Batman Year One animated film, there's a point where, a Batman who doesn't even really have a suit on saves Jim Gordon's newly born child. You know what I mean? Like, he jumps off a bridge to save his newly born child. You want to talk about lifelong dedication? You saved my son after he's been thrown off a bridge and you don't even have a bat suit? Yeah, I'm your boy for life. I'm your boy for life. That's what I just wanted something to explain that level of dedication that Wright had for Batman. And they didn't really show it. And of course, it's deserved. I mean, Batman ain't gonna let you down, but at the end of the day, a cat like Gordon, especially played by an actor like Jeffrey Wright, they got to do a little better as to the motivation. That's my humble opinion there. So again, similar to Guinan, there's kind of an undue amount of dedication that I, especially as a black man, you're gonna have to explain to me. You're gonna explain to me because especially a black man his age, you have any kind of serious dedication to a white dude, he had to earn that shit. You got to show me that. He was not weak. He's not arrogant. He's a strong dude. He's strong minded, and he's in a precinct full of people he can't trust. Which means, and they dealt with this even in the Dark Knight series. You had to earn his respect. You had to earn his attention, and his support. And so I just wanted to see a little more of that. But I didn't think it was poorly done by any means. I've never seen Jeffrey Wright do anything poor. Andy Serkis playing Alfred was good. He brought a whole different element. Artisan goes into great detail on that. I don't even think I need to. I've liked most of the Alfreds that I've seen over the years. Andy, I don't know if I'd say he was my favorite, but I liked him. He was strong and yet he was caring. One thing I was a little surprised about is that he and Bruce Wayne were not as close as I would have imagined. And so that was interesting to see. Usually by the time they start a Batman story, especially if you see the origin, he's right there, before Bruce's parents die. So, you see him kind of taking over as the father figure. In this, he's kind of kept at arm's length. It doesn't seem to be something that he chooses, but it is what it is. He's trusted and he participates, but the emotional connection, you actually get to see it working. And that's one of the things I liked about the film. You got to see certain relationships that weren't etched in stone yet. Jeffrey Wright, the James Gordon one kind of was. I wanted a little explanation for that, but Alfred, still not entirely there yet in terms of the closeness with Bruce, to the extent that you can have that with, to the extent that Bruce is capable of that. It still wasn't quite there. But maybe that's something they're going to develop. So that was interesting to me. Let me see what else. They actually did have a black woman mayor. And as much as I thought she was going to be a Mary Sue, it wasn't that she did anything particularly incredible. It was just to see the kind of Gotham they're in, where she ain't had no cakewalk. I tell you that. And that was good to see. Because if you're going to be this new, young, hotshot black woman mayor, and you're going to come in and tell everybody what needs to be done for things to be handled right, I don't believe you until you got to go through some difficulty. And her ass went through some difficulty. And, if in future films, if they continue with this universe, it'd be good to see how she responds to that. That might have a serious effect on my ability to trust, that particular character. Now, again, you can look at her husband, which they show you a little bit of at the end. You tell me your thoughts on that. But we're reaching this real era of not only racial ambiguity in the characters, but, there's no longer a kind of, racial homogeny in relationships anymore, except when they're white. But black characters, not so much. So, hey, it is what it is. You can check that out. Colin Farrell. Colin actually did fairly well. You forget that he is, the Penguin. And that to me is a hallmark of a good performance. When I forget who's acting, you know what I mean? Like when I saw Jamie Foxx's Ray, I forgot that it was Jamie Foxx. Hell, when I saw Denzel as Malcolm, you know how good you got to be a chocolate brother playing Malcolm, and the audience forgets it's you? You know how good an actor you have to be for that to happen? Well, I'm not putting Colin Farrell on that level, because those cats didn't even use a lot of makeup. The makeup did a lot of the work for him, but I give him credit. The accent, he went heavy with like a New York accent. And if you hadn't seen the credits, you would have never guessed it was Colin Farrell. I like that kind of stuff. John Turturro, sometimes it's hard to take him serious because he's played in so many farcical, kind of movies and roles, but he does this well. He does it well. It's Carmine Falcone. He does it well. Not, mastermind, chess player, plays people against each other well on a citywide level. So, an interesting take on Falcone, and you really get the weight of him as a villain. You can't take him light by any measure. So it was good to see. The Riddler. Very interesting take on the Riddler. It's probably one of the most unique takes I've ever seen. Of course, the only one we have to go with as far as live action is Jim Carrey. And it's not even slight to Jim Carrey. He did what Jim Carrey was pretty much playing himself. They hired him to do that. So and they wrote the script. So it was what it was. I don't even really think it's so much a matter of whether Jim Carrey did a good job. They hired him to be Jim Carrey. They just kind of threw the green suit on him, right before the camera started rolling. But, they knew who they were hiring from the first place. So if that's your introduction to the Riddler, this is going to be very different, right? This is very different, very, serial killer-esque, kind of Riddler, which I didn't expect. I was interested to see, if they were going to introduce any other characters. They kind of did, as far as the villains. There's a certain villain that we all think about when it comes to Batman, where you got to see a bit of a glimpse. I will say I wasn't impressed, but I'm a little spoiled. And I'm a little spoiled because when I first heard that Heath Ledger was going to play the Joker in the Dark Knight series, the last time I'd seen Ledger was, what was the movie where he played a knight that was jousting all the time? What was the name of that movie? Y'all know. I'm trying to remember. Yeah, Jim Carrey can act, but they really hired him to be full on Jim. It's like hiring Robin Williams to play Robin Williams. Now you can hire Robin Williams, to be an actor, or you could, and he was a brilliant actor. But when you hired him to play Robin Williams, the comedian, as brilliant as he was, as funny as he was, it was the same thing. They kind of hired Jim Carrey that way. They didn't really want him to act. They wanted him to be who he was. Thank you. Knight's Tale. Yeah, that was the last time I saw Heath Ledger, was in Knight's Tale. I was like, you mean this dude is about to be Joker? Like I was, if you'd have caught me around that time, I was hot. I really wasn't interested in seeing it, but I can say I was happily convinced, and I was wrong. And there are plenty of people that didn't like his performance. I don't give a damn. I did. I thought his Joker was the best live action Joker I'd seen. But part of that is because I wasn't as impressed with the Michael Keaton, the Batman series as others were. I never thought Michael Keaton should have been Batman. Again, last time I'd seen Michael Keaton before Batman was Mr. Mom. I didn't really want to see him as Batman. He didn't do a bad job, but he wasn't physically capable of carrying off the Bruce Wayne that I had grown up reading. The detective, I didn't really see it. The martial arts, he didn't have the physicality. I didn't really believe it. Jack Nicholson played the Joker as Jack Nicholson. And there were elements of it that I liked that I didn't expect to, because Jack is just so goddamn ballsy. He's hilarious to me. There were scenes that he had me laughing just because he's Jack. But Heath Ledger, for me, was the best live action Joker I'd seen. Now, if you'd have told me that Luke Skywalker from Star Wars would be my favorite Joker, I would have never believed you. Matter of fact, even when Batman, was out on TV, the cartoon, it took me years before I knew that was Mark Hamill. And as far as I'm concerned, he's actually my favorite Joker, but I gotta give Heath Ledger credit. Playing live action Joker on screen is a different thing than voice acting. And he brought a three-dimensionality to a character that we got no backstory on before or after. He just comes out of nowhere and disappears into nowhere, even though he's not dead. You know what I mean? We didn't even see him running around in the third one. So I have to give Heath Ledger credit. What I briefly saw in this, this latest one, as far as that character is concerned, you be the judge. I wasn't highly impressed, but there's still a long way to go, so we don't know where they're going to go with that. And that depends on how well this movie does, and I think it will do well enough. I mean, it wasn't Spider-Man good to me. A lot of people loved it. I'm getting a lot of good feedback from people. It wasn't Spider-Man good to me, but it was good. I enjoyed it. I got my dollar's worth. My son and I went to check it out, right after he got out of school. And we enjoyed it. The fight scenes were well choreographed. The action scenes looked well done. There wasn't any Mary Sue's, not even Batman. No, nothing came easy. Nothing came easy. So overall, I would give it, my stamp of approval. I would say it's worth watching. I know that's not as exciting as people getting up and saying I hated every second of it. That's what a lot of us come to YouTube to watch. I'm afraid I don't have that for you. Maybe more so Picard. I might get a little of that. Yeah. I'm basically watching out of nostalgia, but not because I'm really enjoying a lot of what's happening as far as Picard is concerned. Batman, though, I enjoyed. They got some strong actors in place, but I will say they could do better with how they use them. The whole thing with the two black women in the movie, there was a lot of zaddyism happening. A lot of zaddyism. I will say this though, at the end, if you're gonna watch Batman, you as with all superhero movies, stay to the end of the credits. There's a whole nother thing that jumps off, and it's more than you're probably going to give it credit for. So if you see a website on the screen, go to it, participate. You'll enjoy what happens, because what they managed to do is create a world and keep you excited about it even after the movie. But I know a number of people that are going to see it 2 and 3 times this weekend alone. Artisan says Val Kilmer was the worst. He wasn't great, but I didn't blame him. I blamed Schumacher, because I'm gonna tell you, Kilmer had the best look for me. And you got to remember, I'm coming off of Michael Keaton and George Clooney. So Kilmer actually looked the part well. He looked the best in the cowl. I thought he had a lot of potential, but he wasn't directed well. The script wasn't done well. But I liked Kilmer. Now what he could have done is bulked up more. They could have made his hair darker, but he was, as far as I was concerned, he's working with a bad script in the first place. But I think he had the most potential, as far as, he just needed a better script and a better director. But he looked the part, man. If you go back and look at him in the cowl, I'm like, damn, that looked like it came straight off the comic book page. He had the look, he had the attitude. He could be funny, You see him standing in front of the Batmobile about to head out, and then Alfred's like, "You want something to eat?" And he's like, "Nah, I'll get drive-through." And Kilmer was always a comedian. You saw him in Real Genius. It was a switch to see him as Batman, so he could bring in the comedy, but he didn't oversell it. He didn't go too far with it. And there was even a point where the cat playing Robin in that series even got in his face at one point, and he didn't make a joke. He just got right back in the kid's face and backed him down, and it was an intimidating kind of moment where you got to see a little bit of gravitas from Kilmer. So I thought he had a lot of potential, but they just didn't use him right. But we're talking about Joel Schumacher, so I mean, I think the only thing Joel Schumacher ever made that I liked was DC Cab. And much of that, I don't think he had a lot to do with, but that's just my opinion. I think it was just the people in it were so damn funny, and I was really, really young. So, I didn't really have much of a meter to gauge by. But anyway, yeah, just a few thoughts. Curious to know what you guys see in it. Am I going to see it again at some point? Am I going to a theater? Probably not. Probably not right away. But a lot of people are, and I don't blame them, because there were some nice little treats to this. So I would say it's worth seeing. It's not the best thing I've ever seen, but it's a nice break, especially after these last few DCEU movies that have been somewhat disappointing. So I thought this was a nice little break from that. They have an opportunity to redeem themselves with the whole multiverse concept, but if they don't handle it at least as well as Spider-Man, this one of the multiverse is one of those things where it can be really good or really shitty, and it's all about execution. So if they don't, follow Spider-Man's example, doesn't mean you got to copy them, but if you at least can have the proper amount of nostalgia mixed with good writing, good acting, it can just be, ridiculous mess. So we'll see where they go with it. This universe has a lot of potential. The gadgets are there, but they're different. uh, there were gadgets that you saw on him most of the movie that he barely used. So you kind of go, well, why is that there? But then there are other gadgets that, you don't think is a gadget until he uses it. And you're like, oh, okay, that was creative. Um, Strangely enough, and I don't think I've ever said this, it's probably one of the best bat capes I've seen. Yeah, I like the cape. And the way he uses it actually surprised me. I have to give him that. So that was cool. Some of the other gadgets, they have a lot of potential. But he did a few things that fit an early Batman. But here's my biggest thing with Batman movies, and I'm a Batman fan, so I'm never going to be upset at a Batman movie, or at least the fact that it's made. My problem is I don't want to see another year one, and I don't want to see another Dark Knight Returns. In other words, I'm tired of new Batman and old Batman. I'm tired of the Batman that's still trying to figure out what's in his utility belt. And I'm tired of the Batman that's on the verge of retirement or death. Like, I don't want to see either one of those. I want to see Batman in his 30s and 40s at the absolute top of his physical, mental, and technological game. That's the Batman I want to see. I want to see the Batman that has a gadget for everything. I want to see the Batman that can take out a room full of people and not even have to put out any serious effort, but then see that Batman challenged by something that is above and beyond. That's why some of the recent stories with, what's his name, Ghost Hunter, I get his name wrong, some of those have been really interesting. But I want to see top shelf Batman, fully in his cape and cowl, fully aware of his capabilities, his skills. Has been through enough to be grizzled, but at the same time is still dedicated, intense, and very capable. I want to see that Batman. I want to see tired Batman. I want to see Batman, who's so broken, all over the place that he can barely move. I want to see top level, and I will say this. They're showing you how he's figuring out what Batman is. And that's the thing. This movie, he doesn't come into it with a full understanding of what Batman is. This is not an origin story. So you don't really see him, figuring out, well, what is this whole bat thing? Let me draw a cape and a cowl and make it into a suit. You don't get that. But you also don't get somebody who fully knows what this is. Thank you, Artisan Ghostmaker. I like Ghostmaker. He's a nice challenge. I want to see that level of challenge for a capable Batman at the top of his game, right? The Batman that has the equipment for any and everything, but is still being challenged by something. That's the one I want to see on screen. You know what? And a lot of it, I want to see it from the latest Arkham games. Now, I'm not a video game head. I'm not. I'm an old school comics guy, but my son is. And when I bought an Xbox, I bought it just so I could play the Arkham game. And I never played it. I played it once. My son plays it, and now it's his Xbox. But sometimes he'll play it just so I can watch it because I'm not in the games. But I can say I love that Batman, right? The physicality, the tech, the cars, all. I want to see that Batman on screen. That's the Batman I want to see. The one from the Arkham games, the latest Arkham game, which name escapes me, but I want to see the latest one on screen. And that's the Batman I haven't gotten to see. Because Michael Keaton didn't have that kind of physicality. George Clooney didn't even take it seriously enough for me to think about. Val had the potential, but wasn't directed well enough. You said Apex Batman? Okay. Let me see. The Dark Knight series I liked, but it kind of leads me to a whole nother issue I have with comic book movies. I also don't want to see a bunch of directors who never read comics before who want to give you their take on something, even though you got 40, 50 years, if not more, of lore to pull from. And I can understand how intimidating that can be, but I don't want to see directors who've never dealt with the character, don't have any love for it, pull up and just try and pull something out their ass because they want to just do something. No, I don't care about your independent vision and you've never read a comic book. I don't even like people who want to play, characters and they're just like, oh, I never heard of them, but I read a comic book, 6 months ago and it seemed interesting, so I decided to play. I don't even want to see that shit. I want to see people that have a love and a care and a respect for the character. If you look at the last two Spider-Man movies, one that just hit theaters a few months ago, and say Into the Spider-Verse, you're dealing with people whose love for the material is so palpable that you don't even have to know who wrote it, who directed it. You can tell that the love for the character is there. Not only the character, a love for that universe, and a love for the genre. Like if you can love those three things, then anything you put out is going to be 10 times stronger to me than some dude who, just wanted to direct Batman so he can get his name in the papers. And I don't want to see that shit. I want to see people that have a love for the characters and can really begin to tell a story. You can pull, now, mind you, I'm also not one of these people that needs to see everything, page for page from the comics. I don't mind you breaking from the comics and doing something different. I don't mind that. I like it. But I can still tell the difference between when there's a love for it and there isn't. And I think that about a lot of different things. Hell, I think that about YouTube and black men. I love black men. I have loved black men since I first saw my father. I love the strength, the resilience, the brilliance, even the aspects of black manhood that aren't so great. I still love black men. I try to communicate that in my work. Hopefully it comes across. I see a number of people that don't give a damn about black men, but they're making money off of talking about them. I'm not really a fan of that. Anything I'm into, I gotta see somebody's love for it. If you don't got love for it, I may pay a little bit of attention, but you're really not going to capture me. I'm not going to be a regular watcher, viewer, or whatever if you don't love what you're doing, because the love comes out. You can see it. In this series, I can say there's a little bit of that. There's a little bit of that, more than I've seen in other movies. I'll probably need to check it again when I'm a little more dispassionate. Yeah, Blade. I'll tell you this. When I saw Wesley come on screen as Blade, he loved something. And it's hard to say because Blade was such a low-level character, man. I mean, I remember seeing him in the animated Spider-Man cartoons, and he was a C-level character, maybe even a D. Like, he was horrible. There was nothing I wanted to see after that made me want to watch Blade. I'm gonna tell you, Wesley looked at that character, and I think he basically asked, what would it take for a brother to do that? A real brother. Not just something some white folks wrote in the studio. What would it take for a brother to live that life, be that kind of character? And he brought that shit to life. I don't care what nobody says, Blade is the beginning. Even though Spawn came out a little earlier, I still credit those two black men with this whole genre. Fuck it. I give them credit for this whole genre because they brought it to life. I still got to give it to Blade. I still got to give it to Wesley because I didn't get the impression that Michael J. White really loved Spawn. It was Spawn. It was something he did. And he should be, he still should be in these movies doing something more than playing a villain in the Dark Knight series. He's got the body. He can act when he wants to, I would love to see him take on something current, but I gotta say, Wesley put so much love in the Blade, man. I mean, even just the smallest details. I got a mentor who was a Marxist professor for the last, he's retired now, but so one of the things that he loved about Blade was that he said he was stealing jewelry to pay for his operation. He fell in love with that. He loved the fact, but that was those little nuances. How do you pay for this shit if you're not Bruce Wayne? Those kind of things, and how do you dress? Where do you get your clothes? Seeing him go to the middle of the village to get his special shot that he needs to get, but going to see a brother who owns a nutritional store and them dapping each other up, man. Yeah. Wesley put a lot of love into that. That's the level of commitment that I want to see when I watch comic movies, because I grew up reading this. You know what I mean? I was that kid that I would spend 12 hours a day laying on the floor drawing. And if I wasn't drawing, I was reading comics. We moved every 2 years of my life. So anytime I made friends, I never saw them again. This was pre-Facebook. We had phone numbers, but at that time, third grade, we wasn't calling nobody. I just never saw them again. So I was a comic book head. And that was a time where I'd never been to a comic book store. So we got them out of gas stations and liquor stores. And so it was hard to follow a whole series. But I fell in love with certain characters and certain stories because they connected with a certain time in my life. So if you're going to make a movie and you got millions at your disposal, at least have enough love and respect for the goddamn characters to bring it to life in some way. Put yourself into it. Otherwise, I can't sit through it. So that's just me. But yeah, Carlos, Michael J. In the undisputed movies, I thought he did pretty. In the second, what was it? Second one, I think he did pretty well. It's the other one I'm concerned with, where he plays Case Walker. He actually did some acting in that. And I enjoyed him in it. But anyway, so yeah, just a few thoughts as far as that. I'm curious, like I said, to hear what you guys think. Again, support Artisan MC. Go check him out. See what he has to say when he finally does a spoiler version. We can get into the intricacies of it all. But anyway, y'all take it easy. Hope y'all have a good night. Peace.